Hey guys, it's Carla. Today I want to show you how to paint a pink rose. I'm using acrylic paint on an 8x10 canvas panel. This would actually be beautiful on like a large canvas if you wanted to do that. Alright, now I've already covered my canvas in a coat of magenta and a little bit of red, and I concentrated most of the color right here, and then I kind of spread it out to where it's lighter around here because this is the area that I'm going to have to cover with green. But I wanted to start with this magenta color because that's the main color in the rose, so that will save me a lot of time and trouble. All right, and I've already sketched my outline on. I traced it on. So I'm ready to get started. Okay, I'm going to start with my filbert hog bristle brush, and you could actually use a flat hog bristle if you don't have a filbert. And actually, maybe this one used to be a flat. I don't know. Sometimes when you use them a lot, they turn into a filbert. But anyway, because it's rounded, I just felt like I would get better results. All right, I'm going to start with my my lighter edges of my petals. So I'm going to pick up white. And I don't have a lot of paint on my brush, so I'm going to start at the edges where I want it the brightest. And I'm just kind of scrubbing this in. Don't be afraid to scrub with the hog bristle brush, because that's what they're made for. So I want it brighter on the edges, and then as I come in, I'm kind of using less paint and less pressure. I'm not real concerned right now with what all this is going to look like. I just want to get these bright edges in. I'm also not concerned about if I want, if I maybe get too much white in there and I want it more pink, I can always come back in with a glaze and put the pink back in. Okay, so I'm going to start looking at the lighter areas and kind of dry brush those in. And this will start giving my petals dimension. It's pretty light over here on this side. Okay, now I'm not at all finished with that petal, but I want to do this to all the other petals, and then I'll come back with some more detail. So I'm going to load my brush with white. I'm going to start on the edges because I'm using the tip of my brush, the end of my brush, to get this sharp edge. And then I'm using the flat part of the brush to blend it in. And like I said, I'm not real worried about getting too much white in there because I can glaze over it, but I do want to kind of pay attention to the lighter and darker areas, just so that it'll save me some glazing later. Keep in mind too that this white will dull once it dries. It's not going to be as bright as when you put it on. And there's some areas where it's just like a line, and if you feel more comfortable using a different brush for that, that's fine. If the brush you're using, if you're able to get, you know, kind of a sharp edge on it, then you can use it. I wanted to show you on one of these petals that if you, like right here on this one, if you do end up making brush strokes instead of just blurry, instead of just scrubbing, make sure that your brush strokes always go toward the center of the flower. So the center of the flower is right here. This is like, if you look down in there, the center is right here. So if I have brush strokes, they need to go in that direction so that it'll be more believable, because the grain of the petals is angled, always angled toward the center. So if you have to put your finger where you see that the center is, put one finger there, and then just always brush toward your finger. Now I have a lot of my white in there, not nearly all of it, because like I said, white you always have to come back and brighten. And I just kind of loosely painted this in there just so that I kind of know where my light spots are. So now I want to move to my darkest spots. So I'm going to use about equal parts magenta and red. I want this to be very dark. I rinsed the white out of my brush. Okay, now I'm kind of offloading it so that I don't have too much on there. And I want to look at my darkest areas. The very darkest one I see is right here on the right side of this bulb. And I'm using the end of my brush to get that sharp edge, and then I'm using the side of my brush to blend it in. And that's not as dark as it's going to be, but we'll get there. Okay, and then I see another dark area right here. This line right here is dark. Okay. Just looking for any dark areas. And all I'm doing right now is just tapping in these small spaces. Try not to get too impatient with this step. You want to gradually get darker, not if you suddenly do it, then all you have is the light and the dark. This gives us that one of the medium tones that will help with the blending. I'm just very lightly scrubbing. I don't want to get carried away with it. Now where this bulb curves in, I want it to be dark, and then I'll make this lighter. But this will give me the illusion that it's curving, that it's three-dimensional. Okay, now I may have to come back to this color, but right now I want to move on to the really dark shadows. So with that color, I'm going to add a little bit of black to it. Now again, I've got this really dark area right here. If I don't put these really dark ones in, the whole painting is going to look flat. So don't be afraid of the dark. I'm going to add a little bit more black to this, because there's places that I want it very, very dark. Be careful with black because it can kind of take over, but it is very necessary to have that really dark color in there. Now I've rinsed my brush and I'm going to pick up just red. So right here where I've got it real dark, this is going to be my transition color to go from dark to light. On the bottom of this bulb, I'm just taking my brush and I'm starting at the edge and then just kind of sweeping it up so that I have that dark edge to make it more three-dimensional. That is a very small area right there, but very important because it kind of gives that petal its shape and it separates it from the one behind it. It's usually the smallest details that matter the most. Now I'm going to start on my pink. So for now, I'm going to use just the plain magenta. And this is just going to kind of smooth out my texture that I had in the background and kind of make everything more cohesive. And in doing this, if you're scrubbing like this, you do want to try to stay in the grain of the petal. There's going to be a lot of layers on this rose because we've got so many different shades from white to black. So, you know, all the pinks and reds in between, we've got all that to get in there. So at this point, I just want to look for my my really pink shades, keeping in mind my brush strokes if I have any. Right here on this little skinny area, I'm using the side of my brush, the skinny part. Okay, now with that color on my brush, I'm going to pick up some white. You know, we went from black to red to magenta, and now I just want a lighter magenta. And I'm going to start softening my petals, and at this point I am trying to keep with the grain of the petals so that it's believable when my brush strokes show they'll be going in the right direction. And while you're painting this, okay, right here I'm just trying to, I'm trying to soften the transition right here. I want to keep this a little darker because it's kind of, it's curving in toward the center. But I don't want to cover it up completely. I don't want to cover it up completely. I need it in there, but I need it to be just a softer transition. But I want to keep all of my brush strokes. You know, I want to kind of create those grains in it, and you don't have to have them. You can have it all smooth, but it looks good to have the grain, the brush strokes in there, as long as they're going in the right direction. But while you're painting this against this pink background, you might start feeling like the rose is not pink enough. But once we get that green in there, the rose will pop out then. It'll stand out against the background. Right now it's just not. But try to not think about that while you're painting it, because you might add too much pink and then you get the background on and it's like, you know, maybe it's more than you wanted. Again, right here, I've got this darker pink and this white, and I need to transition it. Now, on the center of this bulb, I'm going to kind of scrub in that, I'm lightly scrubbing that light pink shade. Now, with just barely any white, I want to lighten that magenta a little bit. I don't want it as light as we just did. I want a little bit darker shade. Just play with your colors until you get, you know, this doesn't even have to be a pink rose, but whatever color you're using, just play with the shades until you get what you want. You know, there's no rule about how many times you can go over what you've already painted, so that's what's great about acrylic, is you can do that. You can change whatever you want, as long as you, sometimes you have to wait till it dries, but you can pretty much change anything. At this point, if there's any white that's too white for you, like maybe you want it more pink, then without much paint on your brush, just kind of, let's see if I can find a place where I want to do that. Actually, right here, I want to cover my outline. And have it a little bit darker here along the edge where it's folding back in. And if you don't cover it with this, you can always come back and cover it, you know, with your line with the green when you put the green in there. With my really light pink, I need to shape this little piece right here because I've lost my sharp edge here, and it does have a sharp edge right there, all the way up to there. See right here where I'm leaving this, I'm getting this light edge and leaving that dark back there because the petal comes around and is going down in there. So it's, all these little details matter. So just look around for any details that you've maybe missed. Go ahead and clean those up. Now rinse my brush, and I want to show you, like on this petal where it's turned down on both ends. So I want this top edge to be highlighted, and I'm going in the direction of the grain. I want it to be highlighted to show that it's curving. Okay, and I also want to go ahead and, while I've got the white, go ahead and brighten up anything that I need to brighten. Make everything crisp with crisp edges, and you don't have to use this brush for that. if you have some really sharp thin edges, you can use like you could use a little angle brush, you know, that comes to a nice bevel. So just whatever you're comfortable using to get all the white bright spots in. All right, now I've got all my light shades in. I've got all my bright whites, unless it dulls down and I have to brighten it up. But for now, I'm happy with it. And what I did is I used a little round brush and put in like the little fine lines, the little sharp edges. And you don't want to leave those out, because roses, you know, that's kind of one of the trademarks of a rose, is those sharp petals. All right, so now I'm going to start on the background. And I'm going to use my 1/2 inch hog bristle. And I'm not going to try to make anything look like anything back there. I'm just putting in some green right now. So I'm going to have some dark areas and some light areas. Can pick up a little yellow with my green. So I want to have this light in different areas, and I'm not trying to make any certain shapes. I just want to have some light and some dark. So some of the light green is going to come against the petals, and some of the dark green is. So I'm going to go ahead and specify that while I'm putting this on there. Go ahead and get right up against the petals with some of it. I'm just using the flat part of my brush when I go against the petal, so that I don't lose my sharp edge that I made. Obviously, I'm not following the reference photo on this background. I just want to get some dark, some light. Now that I've got a fair amount of the lighter green in, I'm not going to rinse my brush, and I'm just going to pick up some black and green, maybe some yellow. I don't want this to be just black. I just want it like a really dark green. Again, I'm going to go right against the petal. I'm going to go over some of my light green and kind of blend into it. Just kind of tapping the side of my brush against it. So see how that gives you that subtle blend. You don't want anything harsh. Okay, now I've got my light green in, I've got my dark green. To keep it from looking so like splotchy, I'm gonna glaze the whole thing with green. What that will also do is there's, you know, you always have little spots where the canvas shows through, the little white specks of the canvas. So, or it's probably pink specks, but anyway. So this will also fill those in because it's going to be, I'm going to glaze the whole thing, not the pink part, but the whole green. And a glaze is so thin, you just water it down. I'm just watering down some green paint. It's so thin that it goes into these little specks and fills it all in. But mostly what I want to do is kind of bring it all together and make it cohesive. I want this to be really thin because I don't want to cover up all my dark. This background kind of looks blurry in the reference photos, so this also helps with that. And I don't know if I said it, but I did dry this background after I got all my colors in there. You want it to be dry when you glaze it. Now once this dries, more of that dark will show through. It might look like right now that it's covering up too much of the dark, but it's not. The good thing about having started with a pink canvas is that now some of that is showing through, and that's a good thing because pink and green are complementary colors. Pink and red are, and I mean green and red are, so green and pink are too. And so really all it does is kind of warm it up a little bit if you leave some of that showing through. All right, now I've got all of this glazed, and I love the way it made it look soft and blurry back there. All right, so now all we've got left is the leaves. So I've switched to my little 1/4 inch angle brush, and I'm going to go ahead and mix up a color for that. For the leaves. I'm going to start with the lighter shade that I see, and then I'll come back and put the dark in. And I don't know how well you can see it on the reference photo, but I'm just kind of shaping the leaves that I see. Using this little 1/4-inch angle brush helps get into these corners. You can use the sharp part of the angle to get into the corners. Okay, there's one over here, right here. I might be seeing the stem back there. Guess that's what that is. All right, now I'm going to pick up a little bit of white with that. Put in the highlights on the leaves. And now I've cleaned my brush, and I'm going to use that dark green that we mixed up. Right here, I'm just lightly going over this leaf to kind of darken it a little bit, but I want some of my green to show through. And I forgot to put a highlight on this stem, I guess that's what that is. And I want to go a little bit lighter on this highlight. Sometimes I add things that aren't there. Okay, now I want to look at my reference photo and look at my rose. I'm happy with the background. I'm happy with the leaves. I want to look at my rose and make sure that I've got all of the little details. And so I'm going to use my little round brush. I see something that could stand to be a little bit lighter. This little piece of this petal right here, I want to make it more obvious. It's really amazing what just a little bit of paint in a little section does for the flower. See, now that I've got my background in, there may be little edges that I want to touch up or brighten up. Alright guys, I think that's it. Hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, please. That would help me a lot. And check out my other videos. If you'll look in the description below, there's several links that you might be interested in, videos that will help you with certain techniques and things like that. And my Facebook pages, the links to those are on there. So anyway, until next time, happy painting.